I want to welcome you all. This is, I was just thinking about it on the way over. This is probably about our 30th luncheon as we close out our 7th year of the Newsgeezers, which started in 2010. And you guys make it possible. About 25% of you or so in the room are regulars. You come every time. What makes it exciting is that we get new people. And I'm going to introduce you to a couple of new people. We get a lot of support here from Pepperdine University in Malibu. Great institution. I want to introduce you to two members of the Pepperdine faculty, okay? One of them is going to be a total surprise, so I'm going to leave that to second. But I'm wondering if I could get Professor Elisa Jessup to come up. She's a first-timer here, first-year faculty member, specialist in sports law, I believe, correct? Okay, come up, tell us a bit about yourself.
Alrighty.
And your aspirations, why you're here, and what you think of our motley group.
Sounds good. I like the motley group. Thank you, Bob, for having me, and Bill for inviting me. This is a great event. I'm new to Los Angeles. I teach sports law and sports marketing at Pepperdine University, but I have a side media gig. I write for the Washington Post and the Huffington Post. I cover sport business issues there. So my expertise lies in the intersection of business, media, sports, and the law. So I've had an interesting journalism career with respect to that. So thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Alicia, what is sports law other than lucrative?
Good question. As a professor, that's a hard question because we still don't know the answer to that question, which is, it's not like math where I can tell you what math is. We're still figuring out what sports law is. It deals a lot with contracts, though, I can tell you that much. So, but it is, thanks. Yeah. So, alrighty, thank you.
Okay, now for the professor who is a surprise. Professor Joel Tater, come up. And we have pictures here of Joel teaching. Tell them how this came about.
I will in a minute. Give me the microphone. Oh, here's
I'll go to that one.
I wish you'd have told me you were going to do this. I would have dressed more professorially.
No, this is better.
No, the only reason that I'm there is because of Bob. There was a teacher who was teaching a television production class at Pepperdine, and she left, and they were looking for somebody, and Bob suggested me, and to my great surprise and shock, they invited me to be there. But Evie DeWolf, who you're going to hear from a little later, I want you to know that everything I know about television, I learned watching and later working for KTLA. So thank you for taking care of the station. And I want to thank Andrew Lucero back there and Bill up here, Bill, who helped me at Pepperdine every day because I know nothing about teaching, and they help me through the day every day. And Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a feeling that a bit later on I'm going to be told off for inviting Joel up here with no notice. Now, on to our doubleheader program. First person I'd like to bring up is Dr. Art Uleen. Now, Dr. Uleen, the last time around, was not here. But on the big screen, we showed photos of him at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, 19,000 feet in Africa. And he had climbed to celebrate his 81st birthday, correct?
That's correct.
Did you fall on the way down?
Actually, I got a lot of good stories for this, but the truth is I was reaching into the garbage can to pull out the New York Times Week in Review, and the lid came down and hit my nose.
So I asked Dr. Uleen to come back. There's some photos we're going to share that are addition to the one that I showed you last time, because he had just come down from the mountain at the last lunch, and I said, come back this time, we'll share some more pictures. So please, tell us about the trek.
Will do. First, I just want to tell a very quick small world story. Joel Tater's father and my father worked together for decades at the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, two men who were really dedicated to the labor cause, so we go back a long way. Really quickly, the climb was 10 nights and 11 days long, and every day we camped in a different site. And there were 9 of us going with 55 in crew. And in the morning after breakfast, we would start out hiking, and the crew would pack up the entire camp, tents, toilets, 2 portable flush toilets, food, water, and carry it to the next site up the mountain. So this gives you some sense of the way it was. Wonderful food, slept on the ground, and no shower for 11 days. You can imagine what that was like. Here's actually the steepest part of the climb. Many parts of the climb, it's not a climb, it's not technical, it's a trek. But when you get up around 17,500 feet, you're moving now up onto the lip of the crater, and your goal is a place called Gilman's Point, 18,658 feet. And you've got to kind of brave this and go on up. That's me, that's my wife Priscilla. And we get up to Gilman's Point, and the significance of Gilman's Point is that once you're there, you're on the lip of the crater, and you've only got 2 more downs and 2 more ups, and then you're on this beautiful, nice slope, and you can actually see the Kilimanjaro sign. And we got up to Gilman's Point, and she stopped, and I said, "We made it." And she looked me straight in the eyes, and she said, "You are on my shit list." We had done this once before, by the way, 6 years ago, and we recalled it as a walk in the park. Now, there are 2 reasons for that. One is defective memory, and the other is 6 years. It really gets harder at this age. But then you go up to the next point, Stella Point, which is at about 18,850 feet after 2 ups and downs. And you can see that sign up there. And I said, "Now how do you feel?" And she said, "You do this again, you're going alone." This is part of our crew. It was really a joyous event each day. You walk into the next camp that they have set up for you, and they are singing and dancing. It's really a spiritual experience. I don't know if we have any more slides, do we? And that's it at 19,341 feet. And I am now giving serious consideration to going, not with my wife, but I'm trying to talk Boyd Matson into going up again with me. So I'll report to you at the next meeting whether I've had any success. I think that's the last one, right? Great. Any questions?
Yes, I have. How many miles did you go every day?
Well, the question is, how many miles did we go each day? And it varied tremendously in terms of the actual distance covered. The total trip was about 50 miles. We put in around 10,000 feet. And you sometimes would walk 4 or 5 miles to get to the next camp, sometimes just 2 miles. But it was generally a tough 2 miles.
Tell us, what about the altitude? Did you have any problem at all with that?
What about the altitude? There are 2 kinds of people. Actually, there are 3 kinds of people. There are people who can tolerate high altitude, and there are those who absolutely cannot. You get them to 10, 12, 13,000 feet. They really get sick, and there's nothing you can do about it. In medicine, we call that an idiosyncratic reaction. Now, if you take the first group, people who can go to the top, there are those who make it and those who don't. Those who don't tend to be much younger, interestingly enough. And the reason is they go up so fast, they think they can do it all, that they don't give their bodies time to acclimate and they get sick on the way up. So the secret to success, I believe, is being born in the lucky group and then going really, really slowly, giving your body time to acclimate. I just want to thank Bob for all the work he does on this. I was thinking as I drove over here, when I started at KNBC, there were some people who thought this was wrong, that this guy was a doctor, not a journalist, and there was no room for this sort of stuff. What did we need a doctor for? And thanks to people like Steve Friedman and Jess Marlowe, I got a chance to be part of this incredible group and to enjoy the welcome that I was given by several people who are right here in this room, and I want to thank you guys for doing that for me. All right, thanks very much.
Back in February, we had the great pleasure of having George Lewis, formerly of NBC News, very distinguished correspondent. George was here to promote a book called Line of Sight, which those of you who were here, those of you who weren't, will all know, was the story of Klaus Landsberg, the inspirational wizard of an engineer who came here from New York on instructions of Paramount Pictures to start a television station in Los Angeles, which started off as W6XYZ and then became KTLA in 1947, the first commercial television station west of the Mississippi. Klaus brought more than his knowledge. He brought his spirit, his adventure in programming, and he brought what we have today in Los Angeles television, all in a couple of cases. It was all the beginning. He went to Mount Wilson. He made it all work. And George and Klaus's wife at the time, Evelyn DeWolf, wrote this book, Line of Sight. Now, we have an extreme treat this time because Evelyn is with us. She could not join us last time because of recent surgery, but I kept asking, can you come back? And she did. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to introduce them. But in order to set this up, I want to show you a video. Runs about 10 minutes, but it is compressed, basically the history of KTLA, with an emphasis on the period when Klaus was with us.
By 1939, television was receiving its first big public display at the New York World's Fair. And the amazed onlookers were figuring they'd have one of these newfangled TV sets in their living rooms any day now. Just 3 weeks into 1947, on January 22nd to be exact, the vast majority of Los Angelinos were spending the evening the same way they had for years, listening to their radios. But for a very privileged few, something very special was about to happen. Home TV was about to be born.
This is KTLA Television, Los Angeles, owned and operated by Television Productions Incorporated, a service of Paramount Pictures with studios adjoining the Paramount lot in Hollywood, transmitting from atop Mount Wilson, California on television channel number 5, a frequency of 76 to 82 megacycles. Again tonight, we're ready to bring you a full evening of television entertainment. From now until 7 o'clock, watch the news go by and listen to recorded music as you align your receivers for best reception of KTLA.
At 8 p.m., KTLA Channel 5 would sign on the air for the first time as a licensed television station, the first commercial TV station in the West. The event would be hosted by a man who was already well known, Bob Hope. Of course, KTLA just didn't throw a switch and decide to go on the air that January evening in 1947. In a way, you could say that KTLA got its start at the infamous 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin. Working on the experimental telecast of those games was a 20-year-old German lad who was already recognized as an electronic genius. His name was Klaus Landsberg. It didn't take very long for young Klaus to realize that Hitler and the Nazis were not for him, and when the 36 games were over, Landsberg immigrated to America. By 1939, Landsberg was helping NBC to put together that first major demonstration of television at the New York Fair. And just 2 years later, Klaus was hired by Paramount Pictures to set up its first experimental television station in Los Angeles. Armed with a suitcase full of electronic nuts and bolts, Landsberg came to California and began to establish the experimental TV station called W6XYZ. Within a year of his arrival, W6XYZ was on the air, sending out amazingly clear pictures to the handful of TV sets in the area. On its 2 nights a week of broadcasting, Landsberg showed his viewers the comic strips on a show called Telefunnies. He showed the news with film slides. He presented Hollywood features. A great believer in public affairs as well as pure entertainment, Landsberg also programmed a kind of town meeting of the air, which dealt with matters of public controversy. On September 5th, 1946, the matter at hand was, do we or don't we want the Hollywood freeway? At times, it seems that answer is still in doubt. And how about a little Landsberg invention called shopping at home? Here's the format. Household items were shown on the screen, and then a phone number was shown. You called in and ordered the item. Sound familiar? Some 40 years later, that concept has returned to become one of today's hottest TV formats. Without a pause, Landsberg was hard at work providing TV viewers with programs that might seem a bit old-fashioned today, but at the time were innovative, creative, and surely the state-of-the-art in the 1940s.
In those years that followed, all those live remotes that Klaus would beam up from his chosen mountaintop would be just a rehearsal for the main event, the moment when we would cover a real breaking news story. It came on February 21st, 1947, just days after the station signed on as KTLA. A terrible explosion rocked a factory in East Los Angeles, killing 15 people and injuring hundreds more. Within minutes, KTLA's cameras were on the scene, sending out live pictures. For the LA Times, the explosion was page 1 news, but for the first time, a newspaper was scooped by TV on a major news story, and the way news would be covered would never be the same again. If a new form of journalism would arise from the ashes of an East LA factory, it would secure its position on what was a vacant lot in San Marino.
The event that really established television as a news medium occurred right here on what is now the athletic field of San Marino High School. On April 9th, 1949, this was a vacant lot, and right about here was an abandoned water well that reached 230 feet down into the ground. 3.5-year-old Kathy Fiscus lived nearby, and on that fateful day, she went playing in the lot. Somehow she tumbled into the well. So we started in, and having no idea that we'd be here any length of time. It was, let's see what's going on. The thing that is so incredible looking back now, we had no idea of the impact that this was going to make. I can remember sitting in the front of a pickup truck, kind of cold, maybe 2 in the morning with a microphone on my lap and thinking, who in the world would be watching this? It really brought the city together. Los Angeles was a big city, but on this one weekend it became a small town city. Neighbors would visit neighbors that they didn't know very well. They'd sit in front of the set, they'd have dinner there, they'd go to sleep on the floor. Really right up to the end, well, till an hour or two before the end, we really thought that she was going to be saved. And all of a sudden, the word was that she was dead. And everybody broke into tears, everybody was quiet, people walked away to be by themselves. And it was a very emotional thing. And I think that's the impact that people watching had, that for the first time they experienced the long form of television, that they were a part of this whole broadcast from the moment they started looking. And having spent that much time and that much emotion and that much energy to find out that she was dead, the whole city really suffered a personal loss.
As extraordinary as the coverage of the Kathy Fiscus tragedy was, Klaus Landsberg always believed that his major news accomplishment was setting up the first live TV broadcast of an atomic bomb blast. On April 22, 1952, the Atomic Energy Commission scheduled the test explosion of an A-bomb on the Nevada desert. And just 18 days before, it announced it would allow live TV coverage. The telephone company said it could easily set up phone lines to carry the picture. It would only take 6 months. It was an impossible task to accomplish in less than 3 weeks. But Klaus and the KTLA engineering team did it. With the help of helicopters that Klaus persuaded the Marines to lend, equipment was flown from peak to peak. The biggest problem was finding what Klaus called Mount X, a final mountaintop that allowed pictures to reach Los Angeles. Finally, Mount X was located, the equipment installed, and a live picture reached Los Angeles just 1 hour before the blast. When it happened, every Los Angeles TV station and all 3 networks carried KTLA's picture live coast to coast. KTLA engineer John Polish remembers.
We knew the plane was in the air for about 10 minutes, and they said they're going to give us a countdown from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, and then the last 10 seconds they're going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, all the way down to the explosion. And we're looking up into the sky, we're trying to see, and they said, don't look at this bomb with the naked eye, because it'll burn your eyes out, because it's a white flash. So everybody had lenses and glasses, dark glasses. You couldn't see anything hardly. And I didn't want to wear glasses because I wanted to see what it looked like, so I turned my back because the bomb was going to be behind me. So I turned my back to the bomb, and you could feel as the guy was counting this down, 10, 9, 8, and I said, oh, I hope it goes in the right place.
News director Gil Martin described the event.
18, 19, 20. 21, and there it is, that brilliant flash, that white light that precedes the explosion of the atomic bomb number 17. 40 miles away, a brilliant white flash, almost blinding with those rocket trails coming out of it. The fire is dying now. It's turning to a dull red, not quite the brilliant orange and purple and green of past atomic bombs, but a beautiful sight. The typical funnel shape rising into that giant mushroom cloud and now blossoming out like a big ball of cotton.
Look, I think it might interest our audience, which is watching this telecast in Los Angeles, that perfect reception was enjoyed of this atomic explosion all through the country. We had a report from the telephone company that fed the picture from Los Angeles to where we brought it, all the way across the country. That reception was perfect all the way through, and we're delighted about it, of course.
Setting up that microwave link from the sweltering desert floor to the freezing mountains was backbreaking work. It was especially hard on Klaus. Sometime before, he had been diagnosed with lung cancer and had recently undergone several operations.
In my area of this business that is television, news, Klaus Landsberg's great genius was that without any formal training, he had a great news sense to combine with his fantastic technical ability. He was one of the first advocates of live television, getting the live camera out where the action was. He lives in all of our hearts for his pioneering efforts in this particular regard.
His contributions were enough to fill the long lifetime of an outstanding individual. When Klaus died, he was 40 years old. One can only wonder at what might have been.